Obviously, we have the terrible news that Spartan has closed company and gone down. But that doesn't mean the game's over. We've still got plenty more that we can do, and plenty of miniatures circulating. Hopefully people get a chance to get some of the more rare miniatures, such as the ODSTs and the Ultras, and Seraphs. But here we have 2 finished ODSTs. Now, up close, you can kind of see some of the details. A bit painstaking doing something so small that it's going to be viewed from so far away. But these guys are actually probably a fair bit simpler to do than the way I've gone about doing my UNSC troopers. So I think they end up looking quite nice. And today we're going to go through and do some regular ODSTs. Now I've opted to do the stand method, so I've put them on just basically an empty deodorant bottle. It's not the classiest of things, but it does do the job in that now I can manipulate the miniature without actually having to touch him, and also gives me much better grip. So if I'm holding just by the base, sometimes your fingers get a bit fatigued and you can pinch a bit too hard and drop them, and I find that this avoids that. So it's just got a bit of blue tack, or whatever you guys want to call it overseas, holding him on, and that's going to keep him nice there. So we've got the assault rifle variant of the ODST with the closed jetpack, and so he's going on the command base, so probably shouldn't have done him, but it just means I'll have to make sure I do a really nice job on him. So we'll start off with the visor. I've had someone on Facebook asking how I did the visors for the other ODSTs, and so to begin that, we grab out our Vallejo Game Color Silver, so just here, and we put that on our wet palette, which I discovered how to make earlier. Now we have got Facebook open in the background. There's a talk of moving to Sins of the Prophet, which is the moderators and the community modders that are making the game free of charge for those that owns, I can't remember what the original's called. Fantastic graphics, fantastic thing. Cannot recommend it enough, just for the sheer work. I haven't actually got a computer that can run it, but I've watched it online, so it's a bit naughty. Alright. So I'm going to come in nice and close. It's a bit hard to do this with the camera there. Alright, and just try and put a very delicate... It doesn't really matter too much if I miss this and I hit elsewhere, because I am going to come back in here with some black and shade these recesses. So this is actually our undercoat. I know it's quite a bright colour for an undercoat, but that's sort of the point. Because we want it to really pop, it needs to be quite a vibrant colour. So take your time, nice strokes. You don't really want to be fighting the model. Like, these are 3-dimensional objects, not 2-dimensional, and that makes our job so much easier. We get a much better end of the stick than people doing freehand or canvassing. Okay, and that's another thing that this little deodorant can lets me do, which is turn this upside down. I actually was trying to be kind of stingy with the amount of silver that I put out, and it was just way too stingy, because obviously I'm not using much for this visor, but I do need more, because I actually just used a little air bubble worth of silver, so shame on me for doing that. What we might do is try and finish him up as quickly as possible. I didn't really plan this out. This video is not going to be as forethought as some of the other ones, mostly because I've been busy with other stuff in life, and I really don't want the community to die out. I'm hoping the game will get picked up by someone else outside of Spartan, and that we'll be able to continue playing with our toy soldiers and keep getting updates, because they had some fantastic stuff on the cards. Like, I'm terribly sad that we don't get to see things like the Banished and the Marines. Like, I'd love to even just see the renders they had going for it. I genuinely hope someone at Microsoft takes it. I just feel like very much missed out on a big opportunity for a fantastic game, because the game plays beautifully. I mean, I've only had a few games, far more feat battles experience, but of what I have played for the game, it's wonderful. Alright, there we have it. We don't really need to wait for it to dry, so now we're just going to use Watercolors Metallic Sky. Needs to give it a good shake in the background. Thankfully these ones they do separate a little bit. They're the only Watercolors paints that I have that do separate, but they've got a little agitator in them, so a little like ball bearing or something similar, and that makes it much easier. And this is a much wider tube, so I'm hoping I don't get just tons and tons and tons of blue coming out at once. But it may well be stuck. I'm actually going to have to just use a pin off screen. I keep handy for such events to unplug it. There we are. Yep, yeah, and that's tons. Thankfully I don't see myself using too much of this, so the fact that a little bit extra is falling out isn't the end of the world. Okay, we'll scrape off the excess paint. So now it's just a simple case of just getting that right colour in there. Now I've opted for sky blue because I think the visors are actually quite silver in the game, so I'm basing these off Reach, which obviously the box set is. And so they're a very, like, you can get two different visors for your Spartan. You can get a blue and you can get a silver. Well, you can actually get more than that, but trying to get the ODST vibe. But neither of them was game accurate, because in the game they're actually somewhere between the blue and the silver. But usually in the game I opt for silver to get the ODST look, because ODSTs are by far my favourite unit. That's why I've got quite a few of these units. But I'm thinking perhaps I should put one of these up for like a contest or something, just to try and keep community entertained. Perhaps as a reward for moving to Synth for the Prophet. Not sure yet, just because I've got 4 units. Like, it's not an exorbitant amount, but it's more than I necessarily need. However, that is 2 full groups. But I have got scorpions, perhaps a scorpion or something. Alright, so what I'm doing now is just a simple 50-50 ratio. I'll bring that over here. In fact, I'll start again, just so that we can see that's what I'm doing. And we'll get a bit more of that silver. See that huge blob of blue in the back corner? That, my dear friends, is how much blue I got out. Because it was clogged up, I had to use a bit of pressure and it ended up coming out at once. Sort of like ice in a cup. Alright, so there we've got our silver. Just going to focus that. Okay, so there we've got our silver and our blue. So I'll steal some of that silver, put it here, steal a tiny bit of the blue. Doesn't need to be perfect. Ratio doesn't really need to matter that much. It just needs to be a bit brighter than that is naturally. So I might even put a bit more silver there. Sorry, I'll have to get back to those comments shortly. I'll just finish the visor, then I'll call it here, respond to that, and start a new video. I'm terrible at editing, so please forgive how choppy this is probably going to be. Alright, now for this part, what we're going to do is the same deal, but we're going to do just the front 2/3 of the helmet. So we want that blue to sort of stay, might even make it just the front third, yeah. Front third right there. And gear it to the top. So I'm hoping to leave a little tiny bit of this blue underneath the helmet and in the corner there. So you want it to be dark. Like, you can do fancier things if you want, but at this scale, at the 15mm, like, you really don't need to do more than this very basic detailing of just highlighting towards the fore. Alright, and there we have the visor with the base coat and the first highlight done. And then there's a final highlight, and then we actually shade it too. So now we're doing the final highlight, which is just going to be the pure silver. So I'm just going to take that, get a fair bit of it on the brush, fair bit, and then I'm going to get rid of most of it. So just very carefully do that. So that gives me a bit more control over where it goes. And now we're going to very carefully come at a right angle. So on the front of the visor, you've basically got the strip down the middle, like this, running down the middle, and we want to highlight both of those corners while avoiding the middle to give the maximum depth perception. So just very carefully, thin strokes. I'm coming at 90 degrees. Alright, now I need to get the other side. And I'm just going to flip it over for that. And do the same thing. Find where it's coming. And come at the 90 degrees. Sweet. Okay, now that's done. Happy to call that one there. On the highlight stage. It's a really simple thing, like it shouldn't take as long as it is now. Like I'm just getting stuff ready. I'm opting to use a darker color. If you didn't want to buy a blue just for a simple shade, you could just use a tiniest bit of black mixed with that blue that we've got, the metallic sky. But I'm going to opt just to use the blue just because I'd like to bring out a bit more depth. And what we're going to do is very simply, if we can, focus, there we go. Hopefully this one's less clogged, although it probably is. Every bit is clogged. Nope, we can get some of this one out. That's better. A little less waste. And we're just going to take a tiny bit of that blue, put it off on its own, so over there's good. And what we're going to do is just dunk our brush in some water and bring that and mix the water there. So I've actually got some water here. Mix it so it's really, really runny. And then we're going to get rid of most of it. This is what's called a glaze. It's not quite to glaze levels of thinness yet, but it'll do the job. And we're just going to very carefully come in, not worrying if we hit the actual black parts of the helmet, because I'm going to darken that entire section. I'm just going to hit down there and hit up there. Then we're going to wash our brush up. And we're just going to use the wet brush to wick up all of the parts that missed. Again, we're not worrying too much about any of this because I am coming back in to do the actual the weathering. So I like my ODSTs to be very chipped, unlike the Covenant, which I've tried to paint up to be very neat. My ODSTs are meant to be scuffed and battle worn. The whole idea behind the UNSC and the Covenant was the Covenant would have more alive bases, so flowers and sparkles and shinies, and the UNSC will be drab and desert. And I guess it's sort of like symbolizing the Covenant being more innate, and they treat war as sort of something of great beauty, whereas the UNSC might not be the prettiest, but it gets the job done, and it thrives when everything else around it dies, which is why I've opted for this. Plus I think it just suits it. Like how many, like the Salvo Highway and other missions do you see this sort of tundra and undergrowth? And anyway, I digress. So we'll get more of this blue that's heavily watered down, wipe some of it off onto the side of the finger, pick up the model we're actually painting, that helps, it's a good step, and come on in from this side, just with that little bit of a shade. Tiny bit at the top, and it doesn't really matter where you miss because there should be so little paint on the brush that you should be able to do this, but it should take a few coats before you actually see any change, which is the whole point. So it means that you can make mistakes, and they're not really mistakes because you have to make the same mistake several times before it actually counts. But that is how we do the visor. Sorry this one took so long. There was some other important stuff to cover, but we'll get back to it soon.